You know when something's a bit surprising, a bit not what you expected? I have to say, walking in here today was one of those. I'm not being rude, but I thought a Women's Day on a Saturday, we're a bit busy for that, and there's loads of you, more than there was when I stood here speaking at Association Day recently. So well done, women of the association, amazing, and what quality stuff. This has been amazing, hasn't it? And Emma, thank you. Now Emma's another person who surprised me, because I met Emma a number of years ago, and she invited me cleverly to go and speak at Release International, knowing that I wasn't engaged enough with the persecuted church. So instead of telling me I should be, she invited me to speak, where I heard the stories of women that blew my mind, to the point where I sat there going, I'm not that sort of Christian. In fact, this is a different sort of faith to the one I've been. 50 years, what have I been doing? And also what surprised me is as I walked in, I think we were at St Nick's, weren't we? Walked in and there were balloons all, and I was like, this is a bit inappropriate. What is happening here? And it was quite joyful. And listening to stories of dear lady who'd been, you know, in the Eritrean desert in a container, you know, beaten and somehow joyful. And I what is this? So when I heard Emma Dipper was here, I was like, well, she can talk about radical faith, and I'll do the ordinary stuff that's like the rest of us going, what? I don't really know. Because actually that was life-changing for me, Emma. I haven't seen you since, much. But at the time I met Emma, we were both reeling from the fact that we'd lost a very dear friend. I had been a minister for about 3 months, and our mutual dear friend fell down the stairs and died on impact, and it was the first funeral I had to do. And things were not okay. And our jolly, lovely little church, New Life Baptist, by the way, not West Bridgeford Baptist. For those who were from West Bridgeford Baptist and are wondering where you were when I was leading you, wasn't me. New Life Baptist, which is a daughter of West Bridgeford Baptist, we just were plunged into no words, don't know what to say, don't know how to worship, don't know what would be appropriate, not quite sure what to do anymore. And that had come on the back of me being appointed, and some of you know this, and I won't go into big details on it, because I want to bring you God's word that I feel might be for you today. But it came on the back of, and forgive me if you've heard this before, my own sort of year of breakdown, which I led myself into, having been part of a brethren church, and then I got more strict after that when I went to university. Yes, seriously, for those who know that particular tradition, that was hard to do, but I found a way to be the most difficult, hard-working, obnoxious Christian you could possibly imagine, and I was working very hard for the kingdom, and I wore myself out. Basically, and I had a year of complete voice loss, you know, the whole lot. It was a bit before I'd met Emma, and on the back of that, I had become the minister of the church. I know, right? I was 20 years a teacher, and then 10 years a minister. And that year in between the two was the formational year of my life, where I could do nothing. I was in my bed watching reruns of Dallas. I was not well at all. I couldn't find God. Prayer didn't work. The Bible didn't make sense to me. And it was a very dark year. That was the year when God showed up and said, I couldn't love you anymore, and I'll never love you any less. That's my formational moment. And it was not what I expected from myself. I expected a lot of myself, and some of you will go away from here expecting more of yourself. I'm not the right sort of Christian. I need to be more, do more, change more people's lives. And there's nothing wrong with wanting to be more like Jesus, but when wanting to be more like Jesus makes you forget that it's Jesus doing it, not you, that's where the danger comes. So I often carry with me, and I'll be talking about this afternoon, my little cup. And my cup is my habit of every day now, where I hold this cup and I drink my coffee until it is empty, and I sit there with this empty cup and I meditate on something that is always good and true from a psalm, and I take a psalm a week, and I remind myself as I sit still for the duration of that drink that the world did still spin on its axis and I didn't make it happen. It's an act of warfare against the enemy who wants to tell me I'm God and there isn't one if I don't do it. So with a husband, 3 children, and that's what we have to have, obviously, when we speak here. We didn't know what each other were writing. Husband, 3 children, a dog. Oh, that's so naff. We've both done that. I thought I was going to suddenly change mine and be something really radical and, some sort of tightrope walker or something. So it takes me to a time when I am leading a church, and this is one of the first things that happens. And we lose our dear friend Wendy, who had said to me before I became a minister, I'll always be there for you, I'll be your mum, I'll look after you. And she wasn't, and I was mad. And all the stuff I had didn't really work. And also I was remembering, I can crash and burn really quickly. I know that. I've been there before. I don't want to go back there. I had found habits of the Psalms and contemplative prayer to be amazing. And I loved them. But I kind of knew I couldn't lead the church the way the church might expect me to. Because there's always the expectation, however lovely the church is, that you're going to be able to lead them in the certain way they want, with all the growth that's going to happen, and all the children and all the young people, and all that's going to happen. And here we are broken. So this expectation thing, what expectations we have of ourselves, that had been massive in my story. And then when Wendy died, and I met Emma, and I heard about the persecuted church, everything shifted a bit more. Like, actually, the world isn't okay. And our world isn't okay sometimes. And God is still God, right? And somehow life goes on. And I don't know what that looks like. And I don't know how to lead church into it very well. And then when I listened to the stories, I was humbled to my boots about being alongside people like Emma, who was brought her kids up in Afghanistan, and I was like, whoa. But God whispered to me, I'm still the same. I'm the same God. You see, I don't know if it is about having a radical faith. I think any faith is radical. By radical, we mean rooted, roots, the roots. That's where that word is from. It's been misused, radicalising people, isn't it? So we're a bit scared of it. If our rootedness, it's who our rootedness is in, isn't it? Not whether we've got enough of it, or whether we've got the scary stuff with the calling that takes us across the world, or the gentler stuff with the calling that makes you have to love the person you live with. It's still radical. Seriously, sometimes takes more faith to stay where you are. But it's not how radical is your faith. I was just speaking at Incarnate Conference this week with a lovely lady who calls herself a public theologian. So she theologizes into the public space, not for churches. And it was on radical hospitality. And she started with, I know you've picked this title, but I'd want to drop the word radical, because hospitality itself is radical. It is the rootedness of what we believe. Every act of hospitality is radical. It's changing the roots of our very being. So I would say to you, I think faith is radical. You see, in my story, what I don't tell you, and what some of you already know, is that very unexpected journey of brokenness, my own, the church's, became the roots, the radical basis for a movement that is taking off, actually. So for those who don't know, we've got... I'm not doing very well with my technology either. Wait a minute. There we go. So, here we go, back again. This is one of the Renew Centres we've got. So, if I take you back to what a Renew Centre is, 4 years ago, set up the first one in West Bridgeford. Some of you have been, Renew 37. It's a simple space. It's what I needed when I wasn't well. I had gone to Faldybrennan in Pembrokeshire, which is a wonderful retreat centre, and I'd found these beautiful rhythms of prayer, beautiful, psalm in the morning, Lord's Prayer at lunchtime, examine at the end of the day, beautiful, and I'd come back very irritated. And I was very irritated because I had met loads of people for whom their mental health was really poor, much poorer than mine. And they were walking with a limp for their whole lives with this darkness inside their heads. And yet there was nowhere for them to go, because they couldn't afford to go to Pembrokeshire. And I was leading a jolly church to put on jolly services on a Sunday and thinking, hang on a minute, if we are not holding people who are broken in the very presence of God, then what the flip are we doing every week? If this is not a place where people can come and find the still presence of God, then let's find somewhere that we can do that. And so we came across a little place on the high street. Long story, I'll tell some more off this afternoon. And we set up a prayer space where anyone could join in, where we pray in a way like I just did then, which is simple and anyone can join in, and lots of people do. And then we would then have a cafe area that looks like a cafe, but it feels more like a shared front room where I could do my hobbies because I'd forgotten to look after myself. It was very selfish. I wanted a prayer space to pray with people, and I wanted a place to do hobbies where people who were all broken could come and find each other. And actually people who weren't broken but just needed to slow down a bit could also come and hang out together, where we could be present. So being present was a big deal. Like being really present, sitting for longer than the few minutes that you usually give someone in a conversation. Letting somebody be with you, giving them your time, the greatest gift we can do. For me, I was so busy sorting out God's stuff for him, I'd forgotten how to do this stuff. This centre is not, of course, in West Bridgford. You'll notice it looks big and Anglican. In fact, it is. It's in Northampton. This is St Giles Church, Northampton. Because what happened after we set up the first one, so we were being present in the cafe, being prayerful in the prayer room, and being in partnership with the mental health team, because they were loving it by then. Not every mental health team loves it, by the way, but in Rushcliffe we got a good relationship going, and it meant that the church could just rock up and be human, and we didn't have to do rubbish mental health care on the cheap, and we could signpost people back into where they get proper help, but we could still be there on the days when there wasn't any help to be had. And it was the simplest way of showing up. So other churches started taking it on. So that was 4 years ago. 3 years ago, I think Ruddington were the first to jump, and then Hucknall jumped and had said, we'll have a go. And then Northampton came quite quickly on board. I think they've been open about a year and a half. And I thought, this can't work. They want to do it in their church building. That's not my dream. My dream was that we go on the high street and we get a lovely cafe, and we all have lovely cafes on the high street. God seemed to be up to something else, as is his wont. So he went, shall I be God and you be Ruth? We'll do it that way. It always works better. And this one, once a week, this church transforms into a renew space with, you can see some activities going on, people doing jigsaws and stuff, and then the prayer space the other side, and the mental health team pop in. That space has replicated itself 4 times into 4 other Anglican churches. Even, like, I've had nothing to do with it. It's a bit scary, actually. They've sort of just done it. They've just taken it on. I hear they're having an important visitor, I can't say who, to have a look at that space just after April, but you can imagine who that might be in the Church of England. So it's being taken notice of. Being in partnership, the partners that we work with are people in your church who are already broken, who are already know they're broken. No, we're all broken, right? We've all got mental health. Just some people already acknowledge. They're your experts. Listen to them. Listen to how hard it's been for them to access stuff in your church. Let them help you set up a space that works for them, and then it'll work for everybody else. We also work with mental health professionals. Lady with the curly hair there, Rachel, she's an atheist, a rubbish one, because she comes to our prayer times and she turns up and she said, you need to attend to your prayer habits, church, because that's what will stop you with all the egos that are flying around. I'm going, you are an atheist, right? She went, well, maybe agnostic. So she's great. And then we also work with people in the community. So this space, for those of you who've been to it, you'll know that it works in conjunction with an existing cafe. The cafe owners on one side running their business, the church running the other side, and we share the space between us. It means that we don't have to do cappuccinos for Jesus. Sorry if you are doing those, but sometimes we're so busy serving people from behind the counter, we find it difficult to go and sit down the other side of the counter. So Renew Space is simple. It's the simplest form. People help themselves to teas and coffees. They bring and give as well as receive. The 5 ways to well-being that I'll talk about later that help us with our well-being include giving. And so we don't just say, we're the Christians, we're the church, let's give you everything you ever needed, because that will get a new sort of dependency for people who need to feel what Emma was talking about. I nearly spoke on that passage. Seriously, I was like, I'm going to do Woman at the Well, and then God went, no, do this one. I'm glad I listened to him, because I was like, what? We could have both done it, then they definitely are known, right? We didn't speak to each other before. So those are the 3 things, but the being prayerful is the thing it's all about. It's those prayer habits, those things that sustain you. Do you know what those are for you? Do you know what it is about being a Christian that is good for your well-being? Because I didn't. Honestly, I didn't. I was so busy being a professional Christian, and Emma sort of talked about that a bit. I was so busy being a spatula for Jesus, like he's going to really use you. No, he wants to partner with you. He loves you. You are his child. You're also a sheep. It's this, do you know what it feels like to sit in his presence and him tell you that he loves you, whether you do anything for him or not? Because if you don't, you've got very little gospel for the people who can't join in with the busyness. And there are lots of people who don't feel able to join in with what it looks like running church right now. But they do want the presence of God. They do want the peace of God. Can you describe that to them? Have you got habits they can join in with you? If you want to explore those more, do get in touch and we'll talk about it. But let's just have a look at this, because I want you to turn to Mark chapter 6. And yet again, it's a very familiar story. Now, you know that familiarity breeds contempt thing? Please bear with me. Don't think you know this one, because two things happened when I was ill with the Bible, because I couldn't study it in the way that I was used to studying it. One was I began to meditate on the Psalms, and that has become the habit of the last 10 years and has saved my life. The second was I fell in love with the Gospels. Just reading a gospel really, really slowly and walking with Jesus. You see, if it's not how radical is your faith, but who is your faith in, what are you going to do about that? Well, instead of going, I must have some more self-worth. I need to know. Well, you do need to know yourself well enough, but surely our identity is only going to be found in whoever he is. And if he's not big enough, or if he is unkind, or if we think he is not good, then our identity is going to be just as shaky as the next person's. And the only way to get to know what God looks like, for me, is to look at the person of Jesus. I have no problem with working with people of other spiritualities and persuasions. I really don't. But we don't fudge it in a renew space and pretend we're being spiritual. The cross is at the centre of what we do, and the Bible is on the table where we are. And my friend who's an imam said, I think Jesus might be very proud of you, Ruth, because actually we weren't pretending. We weren't pretending that all is all the same. We're going, this is actually what we think God looks like. We think he looks like Jesus. I'm not going to pretend that. I'm very respectful of how you are searching for God. This is how I find him. Would you like to know him? Because this is how I know him. Would you like to talk to him? Because this is how we talk to him. So without any fudge, bringing ourselves to the table and what our faith is what this is about. And our brokenness. And our failures, and not being afraid of those, because that makes us human, right? Here we go. Chapter 6 of Mark, verse 30. And the 12 apostles, by the way, have just been out. The disciples, they've been out. They've seen amazing things happen. They've come back. They've also had a very big disappointment with John the Baptist losing his head, quite literally. And now we get to verse 30. The apostles returned to Jesus and told him all they'd taught and done. And he said to them, come away by yourselves to a desolate place and rest a while. Isn't that lovely? I'd love to say that the word that God has given me for you is that. Come away with me and rest a while. I was kind of hoping to stop there and go, listen, guys, I think Jesus just wants you to come away with him and rest a while. And that was what I was intending to do when I drove to Val-de-Brennan that day. I was coming away with Jesus to rest a while. And that was why I was so irritated on my way back to find the faces and the voices of all those people for whom they also needed that going through my head. You see, the thing is, we're not isolated, are we, really? We're not just us and Jesus. It is a personal faith in Jesus, but it's massively affected by the community in which we are. We're not an island. And so here, these guys go, oh, thank goodness we're going to get away from all these people for a while. And for many, they were coming and going, and they had no leisure even to eat. Doesn't get worse than that. They went away in the boat to a desolate place by themselves. Now, many saw them going and recognized them, and they ran there on foot from all the towns, and they got there ahead of them. And when Jesus went ashore, he saw the great crowd, and he sent them all away so he could spend some time with his disciples. No, he had compassion on them because they were like sheep without a shepherd. And he began to teach them many things. And then it goes on into the story of these 5 loaves, 2 fish, that we know, that get broken and get given around and feed lots of people. So I won't go into the entire story because I used up all my time chatting to you. But Do you get that the expectations of the disciples must have gone from here? I mean, I love following these disciples, don't you? Just going with them and imagining you're there with them. And then just going, oh, what? People? Again? And we're hungry? Do you ever feel like this? Is it just me? Some of you who have raised families as well, it's like, really, you want more from me? I tell you, do you know what? The thing that threw me over the edge, and I can remember sliding down the kitchen cabinets and sitting on the floor and crying when I wasn't well, was, what will I make for tea? Seriously. It was just one more thing I couldn't think of. One very simple thing. And they must be weary to their bones. And then he says, you give them something to eat. Oh, that's very funny. We are starving hungry. You've brought us here to a desolate place to spend some time on our own, and now you're telling us to give them something to eat, and you know I've got nothing. Have you felt like that ever? I have got nothing. I want to serve you. I want to follow you. I want to be with you, but I've got nothing for these people. So please don't ask me to give them anything, because I am running on empty here. Now, actually, hear me right, because mostly I'm saying to people, so dial it back, have some habits that mean that you are sitting in God's presence and feeding for yourself. So I've been troubled by this passage because it's not feeding well into my theology, which I made up myself. Because you see, he does ask them to do some stuff, and they are tired, and they are empty. And he does ask them to take a step of faith. And he's sitting amongst them and they've got nothing. And he's like, do you trust me? Do you believe that I can do this? Go on, get me the loaves. Right, let's bless them. What's going through their heads? No, seriously, put yourself in their place. It's like, just give me the bread. I'm so hungry. I can't believe you won't send these people. Or don't you even care about us? I've been serving you all this time. Just seriously. There'd be enough bread there for the 12 of us to have at least a bite each. What? I don't know. Is that just me? Maybe it's just me. So he breaks the bread and he gets them to do all the work of sitting everybody down. And they do it. They sit hundreds of people down in groups. What are they thinking? It's either immense faith or just, if we just get this done and out of the way, then we can go off and have our jolly. I don't know which it was, but what a wonderful miracle. Now, what I love about this miracle is that Jesus keeps his promise to his disciples, and he gets them some food in a desolate place, doesn't he? They get loads of bread. And at the same time, their faith grows because they shared it. My story of wanting to just stay at Faldibrennen forever, if you've never been there, it's beautiful. I just didn't want to come back. But having to come back and work out how to lead a church through opening up a space for every broken person I'd run and hid from every person I felt was going to suck the life out of me. To love those people so much that my heart would break if we didn't do something. Where's that coming from? To get to the desolate place and realise it's full of people and they're hungry. To know that my own mental health is nothing compared to some other friends that I've got. And they need Jesus. They need his still presence. And I can't hog it for myself. And we must find ways to share the goodness of what we found of God with other people. We must. We have to because we're human, right? And we are inextricably linked to one another. I look at you and I see the face of Jesus in you. This is how we know what he looks like, in each other's faces. So if one person in your community, church or community, is sitting behind a closed door right now, when no one knows their name and they are desperately lonely, we can't settle with that, can we? I can't. As I drove in today, I don't know North Nottingham very well. I've been here 30 years. And I drove down through the streets of Mansfield here, and I wanted to cry again. And God does this to me all the time. It's like, but I don't know the people in these houses, and we've got no renew centres here. I can't settle in a good way, I think. I could just go and sit at the feet of Jesus forever. The Mary in me has come alive, but the Martha in me is still strong. And I think the both are needed. I don't think Jesus was slagging Martha off just by saying one thing is necessary. It's from the place of sitting at his feet that you will then be able to serve. Is the place at his feet big enough for all these other people to join? Yes. Are they like sheep without a shepherd? Yes. Do we know a shepherd? Yes. Is he good? Is he good? Yeah. Sometimes we've picked up the wrong vision of shepherd. We'll be talking about that this afternoon. And when it says his rod and his staff, they comfort me, we're like, oh, he's got a rod. It's not for you, you know. It's for your enemies. The shepherd is good. He's good. He loves you. He loves you whether you do that thing you were going to do or not. He couldn't love you anymore, and he'll never love you any less. And there's only one shepherd, and there's only one flock. And by the way, the shepherd isn't you. I have to know that with my kids. I don't know as your kids get older. Do you worry less? No. No, you have less influence over them and you pray more, right? And my prayer over each of my 3 children every day is, the Lord is their shepherd, they shall not want. He will lead them in pasture. He will lay them down beside still waters. He will restore their soul. You see, the thing is, if it does rely on us to get those 5 loaves and those 2 fish and make them last for 5,000 people, we are stuffed, right? We better go home now. And some of us have tackled our ministries and our families and our lives as if it did depend on us. And that somehow Jesus would be very cross and disappointed with us if we don't make that bread last. He is the bread too. We can't lose with this if we lose ourselves in him. And just, I can't, Lord. I actually can't. I don't know how to do this. I do start most days like that. That's why I can only start my day when my cup is empty. My cup is always empty. It's like, I've got an empty cup, so Lord, you'll have to fill it, or someone else will fill it. What? I don't know. But I'm not full and overflowing every day. I do walk with a limp of knowing that I break. Many of you do. That's the thing that God can use, right? That's the thing that everybody out there who might not be able to quite access the jolly services we put on, and don't get me wrong, I love the jolly services, but they will be able to access God through your brokenness and through your daily habits and through a space that is filled with God's presence, whether that be in your home or in your workplace or a space that you make together. Radical faith. Radical Jesus. Tiny faith. Sure of what I hope for, certain of what I don't see. Sometimes this much. Do I know Jesus to be radical? Yeah. I met a man last week when I was in the Isle of Man. 3 weeks ago. Oh gosh, I don't know. Recently, I met a man in a Renew Centre in my hometown in Ramsey in the Isle of Man, which is remarkable to me anyway, run by the Brethren Church, the Catholic Church and the Charismatic Baptist Church together. And I sat down, I went incognito, and I sat down next to this guy, and I said, have you been coming here along? That was like, it wasn't a chat-up line, it's just what you do. And he said, I came over to the Isle of Man because my parents were dying. My dad subsequently died. He said, I lost the plot completely. I used to be a GP. I had a terrible breakdown, and I was so lonely. No idea where to go. And I was in the library, and I heard somebody talking about this place. It's a little tiny, used to be a cake shop on the high street. So he said, I've been coming for the last 3 weeks. Every day they're open. And it's amazing. And somebody said, why don't you volunteer at the charity shop? And he went, that would be beyond me right now, thank you. And he went, for that man. So I said to him, I'd just led the prayer, and he'd come to it. I said, how did you cope with the prayer thing? He said, I didn't know it was religious when I first came. He said, but I find that strangely comforting, and I've been going to prayer every time. Now, where would that man ever have encountered God's people or prayer? Have we got places and spaces where we sit down together and God blows our expectations with his presence? I hope so. If you haven't, have a little think about that. Because look at this. For those who are wondering what this is. So you might be thinking, I have to use this microphone. You might be thinking that the baskets afterwards, and this is what I really want to leave you with, the baskets that the disciples had. So here's the disciples. They're going expecting Jesus to feed them, to have a bit of retreat with him. And they get to collect up 12 baskets of leftovers, right? Now, you could look at that theologically, and it could be 12 tribes of Israel. And then when you get the next feeding, the 4,000, 7 baskets are collected up. And that could be the 7 nations of the Gentiles. So there's a big theological thing here. I just want to go very simple. There are 12 baskets and how many disciples? So they thought they had nothing. They were hungry. They go with Jesus, they do a ridiculous thing in their tiredness, act of faith, and they end up with a basket full. I don't think, it wasn't a basket like this. When I've looked into what the Greek is for the basket, it's much more like one of these. So this is what my friends in Ethiopia, I went on the back of meeting Emma. I had the most amazing time in Ethiopia with some women at risk, wonderful. And they made me this, be a bit like this. It was like a backpack. And I was thinking, why have they got 12 baskets with them? What are they doing with 12 baskets? And they've gone out. If they had a backpack or a bag that was empty, that they were going to carry stuff in, they would have that with them, right? It had to make sense to me. And when they collected up, there was enough bread in there. I mean, there was this much left over afterwards. And there was even gluten-free. Wow. And it was from Marks and Spencer's. Nice. I suppose I just want to say to you, if your expectations have gone so low because the radical faith you've had has not been in a radical Jesus, can I just say there's a basket for you? But sometimes it's the leftovers of when you've served in the place he's put you, when you've cared for that person. And it's not as sexy and exciting if it's one person and nobody knows about it. But God knows about it. And when you pick up the leftovers, I don't know what I mean by that exactly. I suppose what I've experienced is, as I've given away in ways that I didn't expect, the well-being that's welling up in me is like nothing I've ever known before. The leftovers, there's a basket for each of you. It's big. So go with him. Trust him, even if you're not sure where he's taking you. The stuff that Emma's talking about, go with it, even if you're not feeling it. Because you'll suddenly realise the thing you were hungry for the most, that's on the floor. That's little pickings for him afterwards, and he's going to get it all for you, and he hasn't forgotten you. Because you know what happens straight after this miracle? He puts the disciples in a boat, and he makes sure they get away, and he dismisses the crowd. Because he does still care about you for you. You're not just some spatula in his great plan. You are co-producing with the King of Kings. You are a daughter of the King and a son. What I'd like to offer you to do as we worship now, instead of me praying for loads of people, which I'd love to do, and I'd love to kind of lay hands on anyone later who just wants to do something with this renew thing and you're not quite sure what it looks like. I'd just like to give you some of whatever this is, this broken thing, because I can't carry all of this. And we're on, 28 centres now nationally. Last time I spoke to some of you guys, it was like 10. So people are joining in with this all over the country, opening up little spaces. It is dead simple. I've just really no idea when I get up every morning what happens next. But if you want to join in with this, I'd love to pray for you. But listen, all of you, there's something in here for you. So really weirdly, it's like communion but without wine, so I'm sorry if that offends you. I just want you to come and grab a bun if you want one. And if you want a gluten-free option, there's also one there. And I'd also, if that's not for you, if you want a carb-free option, there's a pen and a plate, and I really want you to think of one thing. This is daily bread, right? This is daily habit with him. Maybe there's one thing that God is really ploughing into you that says, will you just come away with me? I told you about my cup thing. What's the one thing that you take away from here that will feel like daily bread to you? That will enable you to every day remember there is a God and it isn't you. Father, I just pray for these lovely ladies sitting here who've given up their day for this, that you would just come by your Holy Spirit now and take all of those words and bring them that one thing, that one adventure you want them to go on, that one reminder of how much you love them, that one habit in prayer that they have lost or never had, that one thing that will be like bread to their souls and will have enough as they break it and bless it to share with many. Would you just come with that one thing you did with Mary and Martha and say, one thing is necessary, one thing. And for those of you who are hearing him say, you give them something to eat. and you just can't think you've got anything, let him speak to you now about the one thing you have got. Put it in his hands. Let him break it. So as the worship team just come and play, as and when you feel ready to, if you even want to, come and grab yourself either a bread bun or a big hunk of bread. You can eat it now or you can stick it in your bag for later. Or a plate if you'd rather have a plate and a pen and just write some stuff on it, maybe a psalm that's important to you. Let's take some time to respond. Jesus said to them later on, don't you understand yet about the loaves? I don't know, do I? So I think if I understood about the loaves, I'd know there's always going to be enough. He's never going to leave me high and dry. There will always be enough. He is the God of the enough. Jesus, you are enough for me. Even when I don't see the answers to my prayers, I know you are enough. I trust you with my family. I trust you with my health. I trust you with my life. I trust you with my hopes and dreams. You are enough for me. And Lord, if your heart is breaking for someone else, then I dare to say, show me what that feels like. Because I believe you to be enough for them too.